back in town.
Boys is gender neutral in this example. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Kids from It podcast. Long time no see, folks. We are glad to be back. Kayla, how have you been doing today, my friend? How are you doing today, my friend? Look at that, rusty already.
I'm elated. I'm so ready to do this. Not only a new episode, sorry, my brain glitched, but a new season, because I feel like we've been off this so long and we've like regrouped and we've got all these great ideas for this. So I'm so excited.
It's going to be good. Yeah, we leave for a few months and the world falls apart. A lot of crazy shit going on out there. We are going to be talking about some good old-fashioned end times eschatology. I don't want to get too far into the topic before we do the banter and everything, but I do want to just preface it that the book of Revelation, I think, is my second favorite book in the entire Bible. Hard to beat Genesis. Genesis is definitely my number one, but Revelation is wild. But Revelation is a strong silver medalist. This is a fantastic book, and I can't wait to go into it.
Your reasons for picking favorites is so like analytical too, because I already know why both of those are your favorites because of the content. But content is like, as in the wild content. Whereas if I had to think of like my favorite one, it would be Psalms, because the songs and the prettiness and the sweetness of it like matches what I wish most of the Bible is.
Psalms is not a bad choice. Not one of my favorites at all, but I can see why someone would like it because there is some good poetry in there. I do like it, but Psalms.
And I love this what we're doing. Like, I want to back up for like anybody that maybe hasn't listened to episode 1 at all, or it's season 1, season 1 of our thing. But I feel like what we're about to do and what we're going into is like reverse preaching. I love when we do content that's like just straight, biblical Bible verses and stuff like that, because we do so much other stuff on the show, but we're kind of like having our experience and everything that we've talked about in season 1, like backwards. Now we're getting the opportunity to unpack it logically. And I love doing this with you. So
reverse preaching is a good term. I like that. I back in the day, back in my asshole days on Facebook, when I came out as a non-believer, I was always...
You're not an asshole now on Facebook?
I rarely use Facebook at all these days. So, in fact, the only time that I'll post anything on Facebook is because I'll post Instagram stories and those get posted on Facebook. So it's kind of, a second order effect, but I don't really use that often. But I would refer to myself as an anti-missionary. I was always trying to get people to turn away. Yeah. I do that a lot less often now, but reverse preaching is pretty good. So let's catch up a little bit. Kayla, what's been going on in your life these days?
I think like the last few episodes that we talked, I was still really heavy in the disaster relief nonprofit work out here in WNC. I've kind of started to get back to a regular life. I'm still not back at Biltmore, which is sad. I've heard that I could go back, or I could get the opportunity to go back soon. So that's really exciting. But I've kind of returned to like some more normal work. I've gotten the opportunity to work with horses now, which has like always been not a professional passion of mine, but like a passion of mine personally. So that's amazing. Kids are crushing it. I mean, I've had a lot of drama, but I'm trying to save it because we're going to turn it into content. We're going to do what we do.
Best thing you can possibly do with drama. So I don't know a whole lot about horses. I
wrote TJ.
Well, yeah, there's got to be some weak spots, right? And so the only experience I had with horses is when I was at Maranatha. They used to have this Bible camp they take us to called Living Springs Camp, and I'm pretty sure we rode horses there. It may have been a different camp, but I remember a couple of times.
We definitely did some like cool stuff with Maranatha. We did like one that was spelunking, so getting the opportunity to ride some horses sounds fun.
That's cool. Yeah. That was I remember like being around the horses and everything, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And they allowed us to ride the horses 2 different ways. You could ride the horse with a saddle, and you could ride the horse bareback. And I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was shocked how incredibly uncomfortable bareback riding a horse was. I was, I can't believe anyone actually did this. This is one of the worst feelings I've ever had. I see why saddles were invented. It was a nightmare. And that
You
there
would
was
have been probably pretty uncomfortable on a saddle for the first time too, and you would have been sore as hell the next day.
no,
But
we did both.
you're
We did
right.
saddle and bareback. And
Oh,
yeah, yeah, sure. Saddle wasn't like sitting in a car. Sure, it was pretty uncomfortable too. But it seemed like I was in a luxury like sofa next to being bareback on a horse. I was like, yeah, let's get the saddle
yeah.
back. That was terrible. And I don't know a whole lot about horses, I was mentioning, but I have heard a lot about the racehorse, Secretariat. I remember people talking about this horse
One of
all the
my
time.
friends is his like great granddaughter. He had a lot of offspring because he was such an incredible horse. But yeah,
Yeah, I
good.
saw at the Kentucky Derby this year that every participant in the Derby was a descendant from Secretariat. It was the first time that one horse had sired or indirectly saw every horse descended from the same horse. At the first time in Kentucky Derby history. That was crazy. And I
You
remember
know
they made
the
a
cart was twice the size of a normal horse cart.
yeah. So I've heard people talk about this, and they would always state that Secretariat was such a perfect racehorse, you literally couldn't construct a better racehorse. Like if you tried, if you were God, you had all the abilities to use horse parts to create a racehorse.
Piece them together.
Yeah, you couldn't do a better
Couldn't
job.
do
Yeah,
it. Hi, Wolfie.
and Wolfie's back. Yet Wolfie the
He's
kids from
back
it.
for season 2. Hell yeah.
Yeah, he's drunk. And I said, okay. And then they did a movie about Secretariat. I didn't watch it. I said, look, I'm not watching a movie where the main character is a horse. Fuck you. The main character of the movie can't even talk. Not interested. No. And it's like, I mean, how great of a horse could he possibly be? And then I saw this image earlier this year of Secretariat winning, I believe, the Kentucky Derby. And folks, look at the
You
gap.
have it prepared?
No,
Wow.
I pulled it up when you mentioned horses. Look at the gap between Secretariat and the second and third place horses. I mean, I am not a racehorse fan, but I've seen some finishes and stuff. I've never seen a horse more than one or two, like what are they called, links, like from the length of the a horse behind each other. That is a stunning image right there. I said, oh wow, I see why Secretariat gets all this
He
hype.
was amazing. And TJ, let me tell you, you do need to watch this movie and you do need to like kind of dabble your little toes into horse racing because we talk about like money and power and corrupt organizations or organizations with interesting history at minimum on this show a lot. And horse racing is it's a fun one. So
I would probably really enjoy a deep dive into horse racing. I
yes,
think I
you would.
would enjoy that because it is fascinating to me. I understand addictions. I don't get gambling addictions. I don't. I mean, I guess I or not psychologically, but academically understand it that you have a thrill and people seek that endorphin rush and the adrenaline that spikes with gambling. But it's one addiction I don't think I would ever have. I was like, oh yeah, this is like I guess it's fun, but I'm not going to risk my rent or
That's me
food.
too. I've
Yeah,
like one casino in my life and I did so well, but I was like, that's it. Like I can't do this. So
Kayla,
yeah.
I hate to put you on the spot here,
What?
but years ago, I feel like I saw you post something and you told a story about how you went into a gas station and bought a lottery ticket. And can you tell that? Do you know the story I'm talking about?
I
You bought.
like vaguely remember, but I think what I was saying was like exactly what I just said. I went and I bought a scratch off and I was like, what the fuck are people doing this? I lost everything. Like I didn't win. And then I was like,
That's not
maybe I'm wrong. No, tell
the
me what you
story. The story I remember is you bought the lottery ticket, and I think you were close to winning or something like that. So you went back and bought another
yes,
one.
I do remember this.
Okay, yeah. How did that
No, you
go?
tell it. You tell it.
No, I remember you just bought a bunch of lottery tickets, but I don't remember like the entire story. That's
I don't either, but I do remember being one number off from fucking winning and being
yeah,
irate about that.
yeah. You were close, and then you went back in, bought a ticket. It was close too, and you bought like 5 or 6 lottery tickets in a row, and then you didn't
That
do it.
was
I
the
can't
last time
do
I
it.
played the lottery. I want you
Yeah,
to know that. That's the most important thing about this whole
yeah. Learn real quick on that.
it
I
was Dunzo.
I don't think the lottery should be legal. I don't think it should be legal at all. I
I'm like,
just
why is it always for the schools? Wait, what? You know? I don't
It's
think
just
it is.
if people don't understand how stacked. I mean, people know that, of course, the odds of you winning the lottery are incredibly slim. They got that, but human beings aren't capable of scaling how small these odds actually are, and that you're throwing money away, just throwing it away. And there's like all these legal loopholes they have to do to market the lottery, and they have to say stuff like if you never play you can't win, which is true, but that's about as much as they can possibly say, because yeah, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice on your way to the gas station than you do of actually winning the lottery. And people don't understand odds either. This is boy, I'm gonna try to slow down, Teeter, slow down. I am I'm so frustrated with people. I feel like every day. And I have to remind myself that it's not fair to be upset with people when TJ doesn't believe they're maximizing their human potential and using their God given intelligence and the
This is such
massive.
a Scorpio thing because, like, I have a similar internal discussion daily as well. But continue.
Well, well, don't make me bring up the astrology thing. But also it's that I got to remind myself, okay, TJ, what are human beings meant to do? Like, if you really just separate yourself from it, what are we designed to do? We're designed to, eat berries and root vegetables, shit in the woods, and hide from lions in the African savannah. Honestly, everything on top of that is gravy. Really, the fact that we can do more than that is pretty impressive. So just set the bar a little bit lower. I hate doing it, but I got to remember that. And yeah, and people, when it comes to odds, your brain is not designed to think of large numbers. Like, we can't actually comprehend them. You
Yeah.
were never you were never supposed to count 100,000 of anything, right?
Really?
Right? I mean, why would
Okay.
you why would you ever need to know the number 100,000? Like, why? If you
Right.
if you yeah, if you're you need to
Well,
know.
there's like definitely more than 100,000 stars. Like if we're cavemen, we're looking up and we wanted to start counting. I'm just
Yeah,
saying. Here's one
you
example.
yeah, but why would you? I mean, you would know the stars you needed to know. You would know, like, the weird stars that moved. You're like, that's the North Star. The stars rotate. Got that. But counting them, you wouldn't need to do that. You're like, oh, there's a bunch of them, and that one's important, and that one has meaning.
There's like
And
a
so
load of stars up there, bro.
there's so many stars, exactly. And so the numbers that were actually important to your survival, what, 50 or less generally? Like, how many animals do you need to kill? How many steps is it to this location? How many people are in the tribe? You don't need to know huge numbers. So we have a really hard time figuring out odds with large numbers, and we always do it in like this mystical way in our favor. The lottery, for example. you have you have
Sorry.
like 1 in a billion chance of winning the lottery, right? Would you think, I can beat those odds? I bet I can beat them.
And
But
honestly, winning the lottery is like kind of a whole ordeal too. The first thing you have to do is like tell no one and get a lawyer. Like it's kind of a scary thing.
true. And
Why are
so
we really trying to win the lottery like that?
yeah, but so like you think, all right, I can beat those odds. Those are huge odds, but I'm special. I'm important. I can beat them. The odds of you
I'm a witch.
dying, right? Yeah, the odds of you dying because you're texting while you're driving, way higher than the odds of you winning the lottery. But you're like, those odds don't apply to me. Those I'll be fine when it comes to that. So we have this horrible habit of overestimating ourselves in beneficial ways when it comes to odds, because we don't understand numbers. And it's just it. If we in math, most people are bad at math. When I was in recruiting, I would always ask people before I took the ASVAB, are you better at math? Or are you better at English? 80% of people said English, because most people suck at math. And if you think about it, math is just logic. That's all it is. Math is just logic with symbols. And people are just bad at logic. We just are. It's sad to see, but that's how we are.
My like version of everything that you said that my brain keeps going on is how we were definitely not meant to consume like news like this. I feel like it's the
Nope.
same thing with the numbers. Like
Nope. You're right.
we were not meant to do a lot of these things, and here we all are freaking out. So
La-
yeah.
Last thing on this. I think this about cars. I think it's amazing that people can operate motor vehicles. I really do. I think that, like, when you think about what human beings were built for, we were never meant to move at 50 miles an hour.
To
ever.
be able to go from one, yeah, like start our day in
How?
one part of the world and end it in the other, or place like that. Yeah, that's a good point. I've
Well,
never
I
thought about it like that, but
Well, that is weird. Like how recent that is. That going to 500 miles away, you can do in a day, which never happened in human history. But I was talking about comprehending the speed, right? Because if
oh,
you
that's
moved at 1,000 miles an hour, and you're on the ground, if you're in the sky, it doesn't really matter. But if you're on the ground, you wouldn't be able to process it. I'm shocked that we can process moving at 100 miles an hour when our brains were never designed to move 100 miles an hour. That's actually kind of amazing that we can all easily do, like a child, a 15-year-old can do it. That's kind of weird to me. All right,
true,
so
true, true.
yeah, so that was kind of banter, but I got to talk about the banter I brought here. Although we already spent how long is this? 15 minutes going on that. But okay, so yesterday was the summer solstice, and the summer solstice, for those of you who are unaware, is the longest day of the year. And I remember hearing that the common knowledge is that during the summer, the days get longer, and in the winter, the days get shorter. It's actually not true. It's the exact opposite. That summer started yesterday. Today is shorter than yesterday. There's less sunlight today than yesterday because yesterday was the longest day of the year. And during the summer, the days actually get shorter. In the winter, the days get longer. It just seems though different because of our perspective. But in Indianapolis, which is the city I live in, we are in the Eastern time zone, which kind of surprised me when I moved here because Indianapolis seems like it would be a central state, right? It seems like it's in the center of the country. And I remember noticing that when I got here, the sun, like it actually went dark at 10 p.m., which I've never seen that before. I mean, it seemed like really late for it. And today I checked. I was like, oh, this is the longest day of the year. I'm going to check exactly how much sunlight we have. And sunset is at 9:16. That's what the sun sets out here. And that's kind of late, but it's not 10. And so, oh, that's right. When the sun sets, there's still light outside, right? It's not completely dark. And I found out that there are at least three different categorizations when it comes to darkness. And there's sunset, there's civil twilight, and civil twilight means that there's enough light in the sky to do outdoor activities without artificial lighting. And then there's nautical twilight, which is dark, but you can still see the horizon. And then there's astronomical twilight, which is like dark enough to see celestial objects. And civil twilight here is like when there's not enough light in the sky to actually do anything without, electric light. 9:48 p.m. So my perception was correct on here. 10 p.m. is when it gets dark here. And nautical twilight is at 10:30 and actual darkness is at 11:18. And so I said, I wonder how that measures up against random central state. So I picked Missouri. And so actual darkness in Missouri is at 10:26 p.m. and it's 11:18 here. And nautical twilight is 9:46 in Missouri and it's 10:30 here. And then I wonder what it was like for you, Kayla, North
Okay, I
Carolina.
was about to say you better have done WNC.
so,
I swear
yes,
to God.
so,
All right,
so yeah, Fayetteville, North
you're such a
Carolina is
nerd. I
where I
love it.
picked because I've been there. And so sunset, for example, sunset for me is 9:16. Sunset for you, 8:33.
As
Yep, civil
okay.
twilight for me, 9:48. For you, it's 9:02. Nautical twilight, 10:30 for me, 9:39 for you. And actual darkness is 11:18 for me and 10:20 for you, which I think settled everything I needed to know.
Well,
Indiana.
wait a minute. Do you have to do the same kind of like thought process on like the sun rising though? Because it takes a while for the sun to rise. Wait, are you saying you have more time than me?
No, I said more
Daylight
daylight for you.
time?
More daylight, yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, but this doesn't apply to the sun rising because you're considering like from the moment like the sun's peeking over wherever you are, like that's the start of your day too. Am I
Well,
overthinking this? I am.
I think that it would be exactly the same, like because it would just be pushed forward. Like I
Okay,
mean, I
so
can
like
check.
we're just gonna mirror image of it, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
like the sun, like when the sun rises, like it's based like on the clock and everything. So the sun. Anyway, my point is we should be a central state. Like I should be having darkness at 10:18 and yours is at what, 10:20. There you
Yeah.
go, perfect. So it shouldn't be an Eastern state. It just pushes. Although it's cool. I love the sun staying out until 10 p.m. That's awesome. I love it. I haven't seen that before, but that's just my little
That is
thing there.
crazy. That's crazy. You should.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna try not to next time we're like disputing when we're gonna record or something, I'm gonna try not to bring up the fact that you have more daylight hours than me, sir.
No, no, no. The clock is all right. So all right. I'll go. I don't know. Hey, you said that. I thought it was 7. I was like, well, what? I went back. Nope, we said 5. I don't know. Like, what is
No,
up?
I did check. We did say 5. Like
Yeah,
it just Kayla decided 7 would work better
7
for
p.m.
her, and so
That's all right.
that's where she filed it.
Okay, so yeah, I had suggested for our first episode we talk about the end times because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a lot going on in the world that seems right up the alley of end times prophecies. And if you guys didn't grow up evangelical Christians or some sort of version of apocalyptic Abrahamic religious cults or whatever, you guys don't understand how prevalent this obsession with the end times was. It's called eschatology, for those of you wondering what the term is. And Kayla, I don't know if you recall how often they would mention the foundation of Israel in, I think, 1948 as the last prophecy that needed to happen before the end times. Do you remember them talking about that?
Yes. Hmm. Often.
Yeah. Yeah, they talk about it all the time. And so they said, there's nothing stopping God from coming back now that Israel's a state. For Israel that we know today is not the same as ancient Israel. Ancient Israel, I think they were conquered by the Babylonians in 586 BC, I think. And after World War II, the Zionist movement wanted to establish a homeland for Jewish people. And they decided on the current state of Israel. Oddly enough, that wasn't their only option. They also thought about Argentina and I think Kenya or maybe Ghana. Those were different places that they wanted to set up this nation of Israel, but they decided to pick on the celestial homeland, but whatever. And now with the conflicts going on with Israel and Palestine and Israel and Iran, a lot of people are hyping up the end times prophecies and stuff. So we're going to go over a little bit of the book of Revelation. Oddly enough, I wrote down a few chapters going, I think, till chapter 8. It actually doesn't get to the part that I was thinking of, but I knew we had limited time on this. But what do you remember hearing about the end time stuff when you were in the movement, Kayla?
I just remember, I can't really like quote anything, but I remember like very early on in childhood spending a lot of time, like an abnormal amount of time, wondering what was going to happen after death and trying to like visualize a lot of the stuff that was either being preached at us or like in the King James version of the Bible. Because that's what we were always working with, like King James only. So I
Hell
think
yeah,
it's
brother.
important that we keep reiterating that, because I find a lot of times that there's a lot of Christians out there that have never even read or heard the King James version these days, and I'm like, oh man, you should read it.
Yeah, you
um,
should.
but yeah, so I just remember it now that I'm an adult, and like now that I have kids and stuff like that. Like I've asked my kids before, I'm like, hey, do you guys like just like sit around wondering like, and they're like, no. My kids, so now that I have like some kind of reference for what's normal and maybe like what's not so normal, I know that I was definitely spending an abnormal amount of time like thinking about the end of times, the end of world. And we've talked about it some on the show. But that's because like that's part of what they do. And when I say they, I am referring to Independent Fundamental Baptists. That's who I'm usually referring to, but they weave it into the fundamental core of their congregation, their students, that the kids that are going to school and the church schools, as a fear tactic. So I don't remember a lot of the specific preaching. I just know that like I have been preached at it a million times, but I probably could dig some journals out from the notebook if you ever want me to do that on the show.
Oh yeah, that would be really cool to see
Yeah,
what you wrote in real time with that. I
I might actually
remember
have one.
I remember them focusing on the rapture a lot, talking about how one of these days, the Christian population is going to be raptured up into heaven. You're going to have a lot of planes with no pilots, cars with no drivers, and the world's going to go into chaos because millions of people will disappear just like that. And in the book of Revelation, the Bible mentions that after the rapture, God will send people strong delusion so they still won't turn to him. And I remember reading that and thinking, how can that possibly be? I was always confused by that one day, millions, perhaps billions of people would disappear from planet Earth, just like the Bible says, or at least how they interpret it. And no one's going to think, oh, that's right. That was in the Bible. How could that not convince people? That was always a weird one to me. And we weren't like the sect of Christianity that we were in wasn't big on predicting dates for the rapture. That was kind of a big no-no. Although there were some that did that. There was this book that came out, 88 Reasons Christ Will Return in 88 or something like that. And we would make fun of those folks. And so they always said that the rapture is imminent. It could happen at any moment. And they prepped us for that. They say, listen, any day now, Jesus is coming back and you're going to be raptured up into heaven. And we all said we wanted the rapture to happen, right? We all said that. We all said, oh, I can't wait for the rapture. But as Gail's like, can I wait until I have sex first? Can I do that?
I remember being like, bro, if we get raptured before I get to do anything, I'm gonna be mad as hell when I get to heaven.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
same.
And I never said that because you're not supposed to say that. Like, I mean, you're telling me anything you want to do on earth is better than heaven, but I was thinking it. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that didn't happen.
I was
But
thinking it.
yeah, before the show started, Kayla and I were talking about this, and I was saying how Revelation is my second favorite book of the Bible. I think Genesis, it's hard to top Genesis. Genesis is fantastic, but Revelation is great. As far as number twos go, you can't do a lot better than Revelation. It's
just an incredible read. Like I want to just articulate exactly what we mean by that, because I know we have said it before, but it's a great read. Yeah. Sorry. It's not just like scary, it's good.
Yeah. Like the book. So that's a good point right there, because Revelation is a lot like Ezekiel. Like Ezekiel's very weird too, but Ezekiel's kind of scary. Like I find Ezekiel's kind of like a weird read, because it's talking about stuff. I think it's because Ezekiel's talking about stuff in the past and it's kind of indecipherable, but Revelation is talking about the future, and you're just like, oh, I wonder what this means here. Generally, we were biblical literalists, so when the Bible says that, human-sized scorpions are going to rise from hell, I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what it is. And
big old scorpions, they coming.
yeah. So comments here. Faith and Family Fun Review says, hi, y'all. Hello.
Hey.
Agolf Twitler says, looks like the uncommitted picked the greater evil. He will call himself the chosen one. He will bring the plague. They will wear his mark upon their foreheads. I can't think of any other leaders calling themselves the chosen one, which translates to Messiah.
Please stop stealing my thunder. I have to have things to say on our show, friends.
All right. Let's get started then. We'll go ahead and get
on point, friend. Yes.
Yeah, I made a joke a while ago. I don't know if it was on the show or not, but I said that I think the first red flag should have been waved when you realize the Bible says that the Armageddon will start with the trump of God. I mean, it's right there. Mm-hmm. Like that's the word for word what it says, the trump of God. Yeah, maybe we've been reading that wrong this whole time. Also, Kayla, you talked about for Christians out there who never read the King James. What a tragedy. What the are you kidding me? Listen, look.
Like all other versions, like I think American Standard versions were interpreted from that version. Am I wrong on that? Can we fact check
what version?
That?
What do you mean?
The King James version for English. I'm just talking like English. I know there's other adaptations, but yeah, if you are wanting to know, there's way further than you should go if you want to know like the origin and like credentials of the text you're reading. But if you're just sitting in any kind of church in America and you've never read the King James version of the Bible, you don't know your beliefs very well, because all the versions were adapted from the King James version. And it is a pickle of a read, but I think all the English versions. That's why I'm saying fact check me if I'm wrong. I don't know. TJ.
So
don't make that face.
No, well, all right. So yeah, the English version of the Bible that exists today, none that I'm aware of, would have been translated from King James. They would, except New King James,
I'm
maybe.
Just wrong.
No, but I was like New King James, maybe. I don't know, but
okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Either
way,
mm-hmm.
Either way.
but what you're talking about, where they come from, the King James is translated from, man, now I'm not sure. The Textus Receptus, I think, from Desiderius
We need to
Erasmus.
do an episode on this. We need
It
to do
is
an episode
fascinating.
on
It
that.
actually is. It's fascinating. Like,
We will do an episode on that in season 2, friends.
yeah, yeah. I love the King James Bible. We've talked about the show plenty of times. I find the poetry, and if I'm going to memorize a Bible verse, you bet your ass it's coming from King James. It just sounds so great. There are better versions, there are worse versions, but it's a solid version. Like,
It's
it's been around.
poetic.
It's so great. Yeah, yeah. But I did, the verses I'm reading from today are actually NIV, which, believe
I
it or
brought
not,
King James versions. I brought King James versions because I'm committed to the bit. So
I
we'll have a
love
bit
it.
of
I love.
variety there.
I found that reading from the King James, like live, it does get a little tricky sometimes because the words are odd, but I do like the King James better. I reluctantly went with NIV, but okay, we're gonna go with the Book of Revelation. Oh, there was a picture I pulled up. At least if I still have it, or did I get rid of it looking for Secretariat? But oh, I sure did. But okay, there's a. Whenever I talk about Revelation, I always tell people that the evangelical right, they love the state of Israel so much for two reasons. First is because in the book of Genesis, God says to Abraham, those who bless your descendants I will bless, and those who curse your descendants I will curse. So they say that God says those who love Israel, bless Israel, be blessed, and so they decided to support Israel. And the second reason they do it is because they want the end of the world. I'm not putting words in their mouth. Like, they say that the crisis going on in the Middle East, this is what George W. Bush Jr., he tried to get help from the French president, Jacques Chirac. Jacques Chirac asked him, why should I send my soldiers to Iraq? And his response was, he believes the demons of Gog and Magog are moving in the Middle East and that we need to stop them, that this is an eschatological experiment. So I always mention this and say, yeah, when they say they support Israel no matter what they do, it's because they want to see Jesus descend from the clouds on a white horse, shooting swords out of his mouth. And I'm not making that up. That's what the book of Revelation says. And I had a picture, like a painting someone made years ago of Jesus shooting a sword out of his mouth. But we're gonna get started
Add
with this.
that. I missed that. I missed it.
I can find it during the show. I can find it during the show.
Okay.
But yeah, so the book of Revelation, let's hop into it. The book of Revelation was authored by a man named John of Patmos. And John of Patmos, we don't know a whole lot about him. It seems like he was in exile, I think, when he wrote it. And Kayla and I were raised to see the book of Revelation as completely literal, that everything it says would literally happen. And obviously, that's not the case that we know now, but it does make it a lot more fun. It makes it a lot more fun if you take the entire thing literally. But a lot of the stuff he wrote, or maybe a compilation of authors there, we might get into that, wrote, would have been better understood as like a metaphor. Like 666, for example, is a fascinating one that I don't think we'll get to it today, but 666 means almost certainly means Nero. And that and so Nero was the emperor of Rome, an anti-Christian emperor. He massacred, countless Christians during his reign, blamed them for the Great Fire of Rome. And when the Bible says you can't purchase anything unless you have the mark of the beast, what it was actually referencing is the fact that Nero's image was marked onto a coin. That's what it means. It doesn't actually mean like the mark of the beast on your forehead or something like that. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But what do you remember learning about Revelation, Kayla? Like when people talked about it as a kid?
Well, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned the stuff that you did earlier about it being something that even in in the IFB denomination of Christianity, we were really excited about because
Yep.
I forgot about that. Like I remember sitting through these kind of like very scary and intense sermons or lessons about it, and then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of it it was like, but you're good because you're a Christian and you've asked Jesus into your heart, so like you get all the fun stuff in Revelations. And we were supposed to be really like, if we weren't ready for Revelations, like it was a heart problem, like there was something wrong with our hearts, so we needed to get to the bottom of that. So glad you brought that up. I I remember like I remember like looking for the Antichrist in like
Ooh.
American politics, even as a teenager. I remember being like, how will we not know him as Christians? Like, if we have it laid out right here, how will we not know him? And always like looking for that, but just a fear and like a lot of like weird mental games to play after spending some time in Revelations or hearing about it.
Yeah, yeah. You would think it's pretty obvious that you think when you're reading it, but who knows? And
Yeah.
all right,
But were you asking me to go into my actual selections there? Did I miss
no,
the question?
no. I was gonna say yeah. We'll go ahead and we'll start because I think yours starts in chapter 6,
Ours
and
is
I
our first is the same, I think. My first is chapter 6 too.
no, my first is chapter 1, so we'll start
Oh,
there
okay,
and then
okay,
we'll get to
okay, okay.
6. But this is the picture of we'll describe this. So this is Jesus appearing to John of Patmos in the book of Revelation. We're gonna read about this exact passage in a bit, but think about this image.
That looks like a tarot card to me.
Oh, it
Just
does.
wanted
You're
to say
right.
that.
That does look like a tarot card. Oh my God. Yeah,
Mhm.
good
I
observation
know.
there. Yeah, and the sword coming out of his mouth is a really weird addition, you'd think artistically, but uh, it's fairly accurate based on what we're about to read right now. So let's get going and travel a few thousand years in the past to think or to read what John of Patmos thought the future would be like. All right, so we'll start with chapter 1 here, and it states, verse 12 looks like, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like the Son of Man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand, he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, Do not be afraid. I am the first, I am the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive, forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place later. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and on the 7 golden lampstands is this: the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Hell of a start. You were reading this book, and this guy sees an image of Christ with white hair, sword coming out of his mouth, holding lamps and stars. I'm listening to everything that guy has to say.
Yeah, me too. I'm definitely like, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah. This is I just do like the imagery there. Have you heard people talk about this? This is like maybe an unwoke thing for me to say, but fuck it, I always tell the truth on this. I if you go to different cultures, there's different representations of Jesus. And one thing you'll notice is that every culture that's Christian makes Jesus look like them every time.
I was about to say, like, I want to say, like, none of these other religions or cultures identify this figure as Jesus or as a Jesus figure. But like to your point, there are figures that their stories are just like Jesus's in every religion and culture.
Wait, what?
They're not Jesus. Not these other religions, like they're not going around saying, here's the Jesus of our religion. It's not what you're
Oh,
saying.
oh, okay.
It is a figure in that religious denomination that has eerie similarities to Jesus's story and his path in Christianity. So I just wanted to clarify for
Yeah, there is a lot. There are a lot of those. There's a lot of similarities between Jesus and Horus, or even Hercules. There's a whole lot in there.
Mhm.
What I was referring to, though, was Jesus and Christians.
Oh,
And yeah, so
in
and what?
every religion?
No, every Christian, every so I'm
Oh,
talking Christians. Yeah,
okay.
Christians
Oh, I'm
around the
sorry.
world.
I missed that part. My
No,
brain.
that's right. No, Christians around the world and Christians, and this is what I mean. So you know how you'll hear people describe, the our version of Jesus in the United States in general, the blonde haired, blue eyed Jesus people always talk about and everything. He is modeled after a guy named Cesar Borgia, I believe. If you look at the picture of Cesar Borgia, like, oh yeah, that's Jesus, and it was uh, some guy in the Medici family hundreds of years ago, and. Although I rarely see a blonde Jesus, I hear people say this a lot. It's like, I feel like most Jesuses I see are going to have dark hair. I rarely see a blonde one, on occasion maybe. But I remember going to my auntie's house when I was a kid, and she had a painting of the Last Supper on her wall, still there, as far as I know. And Jesus and all the disciples were black, and I was like, no, okay, that's not right either. There's all right. I
Auntie, they're white. They said so. It's hanging in my church.
I know,
Yeah.
no. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know how old I was, but I probably would have. But I said that, these guys would be Middle Eastern. Like, why would they be? I don't think they'd be black.
Yeah.
I don't think
Oh,
that
okay,
that's
so you
true.
were brilliant even as a child.
Well,
Okay,
no,
you're right.
but it's like I was just thinking, oh, stop it. No, that's
I
not what
thought
I
you were
meant.
gonna proceed to like roast your aunt and
No, it's just,
something.
but I see this, and I said, okay. And if you go to like a Korean church, Jesus will be Korean. Like people do this all the time. This happens in every culture out there. And I guess I can kind of understand that if you want to identify with God, you have him look like you. Was like, okay, we have written down where he's born. We know what those people look like. We don't gotta, twist this around to make this, flatter
You
me.
do if you're trying to sell it. Mic
Yes.
drop. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true because this is actually where I was naive. I was thinking that these messages and these faiths spread by the virtue of their own veracity. It's like, oh no, not really. It's propaganda, it's war, stuff like that. But one of the verses that I'll hear black Christians use to say that Jesus was black is what we read right there, where they say that, well, the Bible says Jesus has hair like wool. And it's like, well, black people kind of do. But if you read it, it says his hair was white like wool, right? It doesn't say that he had like black people hair, but not that it matters. Like, I don't fucking care what Jesus' skin color would have been, but people go to a lot of great lengths to try to make Jesus like them. It's not just white people that do it. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. All right.
All
So
right.
we're trying to let white people off the hook for once, and I love that for us.
Yeah.
That was an important caveat.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna roast them later. Trust me. But on this one, it's like, yeah,
I'm gonna buckle in. I'm ready.
yeah. I don't know, but okay. All right. Yeah. Let's go on to. This is chapter 4. This is the description John of Patmos gives of what heaven looks like. At least one part of heaven, the throne room of God. You're gonna love this one, Kayla. I'll tell you why in a bit. At once I was in the spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. And they were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. In front of the throne, 7 lamps were blazing. These were the 7 spirits of God. Also in front of the throne was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes in front and back. That's the part I knew you would like with the eyeballs. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had the face of a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Each of the 4 creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under the wings. Day and night, they never stopped singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." Whenever the living creatures gave glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne and who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fell down before him who sits on the throne and worships him who lives forever and ever. They lay their crowns before the throne and say, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being." Kayla, this sounds like a fun time. An eternity of that seems like the best possible way to spend untold eons. Like, what do you think?
Well, it's funny. The whole time you were reading, I was like taking deep breaths and stuff because every time to this day that I read Revelations or hear Revelations, like I get a little bit of anxiety because yeah, I'm picking up what you're laying down. That doesn't really sound like that much fun to me. It sounds kind of scary. And I was thinking about how so the first time I read the Bible like independently, King James Version through and through was during my time at the Haven. So I think it was after I turned 17. I was 17 years old. And I keep going back to when we were being brought up and we were preached at, it was always like these and we talked about it in other episodes, but these extreme metaphors, and these really kind of like deep dives into what is the Bible really saying and all this stuff. So by the time I started independently reading the Bible, like my brain, sorry, you can probably hear my kids
Sorry.
fighting. My brain was hardwired to, I was reading in two ways. Like I was reading what I was reading, but then also like digging deep, like what is it really trying to say here? And my takeaway from that, literally, metaphorically, both, is weird, scary. Like why are we wanting to get jazzed about that? I don't know.
Yeah, there's very few descriptions of what actually goes on in heaven other than stuff like that. Where first, like four of probably the most terrifying creatures you could imagine sitting in front of the throne. These weird chimeras covered in eyeballs, singing praises to God, apparently nonstop. It says that they sing this all day long and they don't stop, which is weird because a few verses later it says, whenever the creatures gave glory to God, people threw down their crowns. I said, okay, I thought they never stopped. Like, I guess you'll be throwing crowns for all eternity. And heaven, honestly, look, heaven seemed boring as hell. There were cool parts about it. Oh, you get to see people you knew in life. Like, that sounds amazing. Or you get to talk to famous people from the past, other Christians. It's like, oh, that sounds like it'd be pretty cool. But, oh, go ahead.
Like
Oh,
when and how, in between your praising and like our constant worshiping of
of course. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Of
was
course.
just like, when do I get to hang out with my grandma?
Yeah, exactly. Where's the time in there? And even if you did, there's only so much catching up you can do, right? This is an eternity. Eventually, you'll run out of people to talk to. You'll run out of stories to tell. And I kind of had my own like headcanon idea here that there's so much universe out there, like an inconceivably large cosmos we have. Maybe when we get to heaven, God will let us explore it because that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, I could feel maybe not an eternity, but damn close to an eternity. Like
Maybe we can pursue science without the hindrance of religion when we get to
that's
heaven.
that's incredibly ironic. That'd be so funny if that was real. If that's real, look, if that's how it actually works, I'm gonna like applaud. Hey, good one, big guy. That's great. That I'm gonna use magic and religion to actually
But
finally.
isn't it sad that that's kind of what you like, the core of what you were really hoping for? Like, yeah, exploring space sounds cool, but think about that deeper. Like we were never discouraged from like, we were discouraged from the Big Bang Theory and any
Oh yeah.
exploration of space and stuff like that, but we were never discouraged from like knowing that there was space up there. So your thought process on that, or the reason you got to that, had to be because like you didn't feel like you could think or explore to some degree stuff within the IFB culture then. So I don't know. You're making that face again and
No,
I
it's
like
like I never thought about it that way. I mean, it. Yeah, I can see how it's related because I never thought
yeah.
about it that way. But you might be onto something there. Uh, uh, yeah, that's interesting.
Something
But
to unpack in therapy
yeah,
later.
yeah, maybe it's like buried there somewhere. Because I mean, the idea of exploring the universe is great, but we just can't, and we're just limited
Yeah.
by physics as far as we know. It's like after death, I won't be, and I'll be able to explore it. Because heaven does seem kind of dull. Does seem kind of boring. I always wondered why you needed a mansion in heaven. That's the funny one. Is like, I
It
mean,
sounded like we were going to be really busy and we were just like we're going to be functioning off vibes alone. So I was wondering the same thing. Why do we need mansions? We're not
yeah,
hanging out. We're just worshiping.
yeah,
It's just
and
vibes.
I mean, I imagine it's climate controlled, right? It's not going to be hot or cold. You don't need shelter.
Who
You're
gets to
not.
decorate my mansion?
Yeah, it's like you're not going to need to sleep. Why do you need a house at all? Like, well, why?
Yeah.
And so I don't
That's
know.
such a, yeah, like a human thing. And
Yeah,
like a weird silly
yes.
human thing to throw in there.
You're
Yeah.
100% right. 100% right. Like this is you're a spirit being. Why do you need a house? That doesn't make sense. Like hell, why do you need streets of gold? Why do you need to walk? I don't know. It is kind of a weird thing there. Heaven is fun to talk about and think what the concept was, but it is, you're right, it's very human based. It is very human centric. But to be fair, with Christianity, it was this religion's kind of first shot at it because it descended from Judaism. And in Judaism, there's no concept of human beings hanging out in heaven. That's just not a thing. So Christians kind of created it out of whole cloth, though. They tried. All right. Now we're on chapter 5 with the lamb. This part interests me too, because we were already introduced to Jesus earlier in his like human form, but here he is in like a metaphorical sense, maybe physical. Chapter 5 says, "And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?'" Okay, I guess I should have clarified. At this point, I skipped a few chapters. At this point, there's a bunch of scrolls that God has that are sealed. And the angels are wondering who is worthy to open these seals of God's scrolls. "But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it." And John, being a bit of a drama queen here, "I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside." His curiosity was killing him. "Then one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals.' Then I saw the lamb looking as if it had been slain." Like, is it bloody on the floor? I don't really know what that means, but standing at the corner of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, each which were the 7 spirits God sent out of the earth. He went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who was sat on the throne. That really got me too, because like we already saw Jesus. Now we see a different version of Jesus called both a lion and the lamb. I thought that was cool. But right when I'm like making a semi-normal mental image of this, of the Lamb of God being bloody on the floor, they give him
It's
7
like dead
horns.
lamb.
Yeah, 7 horns now.
Oh yeah, 7
7,
horns.
7 heads, 7 us. Okay, all right. Now, John, you almost had me. You had me with a decent setup here, and then you had to get all weird. Now, do you remember seeing something like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it was always like preached at us like that too. Like there was, and I get my brain when you were like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what did that lamb look like as you were
Mhm.
reading? My brain went back to, I bet it was described in a lot of detail in King James Version, because that's how, uh, you know, that's how they preached it at us too.
Hmm.
It was pretty intense. But I don't know. I didn't look it up, but that's just a wild guess. Like it was probably like there was a slain lamb in the middle of the stone slab, and there was blood, and I don't know.
All right, so now I think we're on chapter 6. If you would like to
Okay,
take
yeah,
over,
and this
Kayla,
is
yeah.
where I come in.
All right, cool.
Well, I have a small portion of that picked out. Did you want to
Okay,
read the whole thing?
no, go for it.
Okay. So the only thing that I picked out, I did note like Revelation 6, 1 through 8, but the part in particular that I wanted to talk about was, and I saw and behold a white horse. Um,
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. I can read it then. Okay, I can
Okay,
read it.
yeah. Go ahead and read it.
Discuss it. All right.
While you read it, I have to step away for like 1 second, but I am listening.
Oh, we'll
Okay.
wait. That's fine. We'll wait.
No, read it because like,
All right. We'll go with what does that say? Posterious Thought says, "How many Christians massacred non-Christians? No such thing as a halfway crook." I mean, quite a few. I was that in reference to? Was that in reference to Nero? Is that like a revenge thing that Christians? I do talk about this a lot. How there's nothing that Christians enjoy more than slaughtering people who either don't believe in their God or people who believe in their God the wrong way. There's no shortage of this. This is why I get kind of annoyed when people mention that, well, this bad person isn't acting like a Christian. It's like, since when? Like pick up any history book. Christians gleeful when it comes to killing other Christians. Like, name your pope. Find a pope anytime in America, in world history, and you'll see pogroms and massacres and crusades. They fucking love that shit. All right, Kayla's back. Here we go. All right, so
thank you. I just had to go to the bathroom.
it's all good. It's all good. All right, so chapter 6, I think, is in. This, folks, is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I've been waiting to get to this. Is everyone's favorite, big rock stars when it comes to the book of Revelation. Whenever they have like BibleCon, the 4 horsemen are always stealing the show. So let's get started here. "I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, 'Come.' I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in each hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades followed close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by the sword, famine, and plague by the wild beasts of the earth. All right, Kayla, there we got the rock stars of the book of Revelation. What was your takeaway here when you checked this out?
Um, so I was like just trying to think back on how some of this stuff, like you asked in the beginning, like what it made me think and feel like as a young person. And I remember this passage specifically because I remember my brain kind of getting stuck on the horsemen and the parallels to like history. And, I would think about like, I mean, even now I think about historical art and like historical figures displayed on like horses of all colors and stuff with all kinds of stuff in their hands. So, and I remember even back then, hearing sermons on like what each of these horsemen represented, and why can't I talk? And they're, each of them had like their own significance and stuff like that as far as like how we received these sermons. But I think it's really interesting. I wanted to highlight the tie to history. Like, again, I feel like obviously, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say no Christians anymore believe like this is literally how the end of the apocalypse is going to go down, because I know that there are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people, even Christians, like when they crack open the Bible and they go to Revelations, like me, they're searching for those metaphors and the deeper meaning of all this stuff. And to me, like this one in particular just ties so heavy into history and like of not just America, like pick any, civilization and where, their particular minds would go. So I always, you know, my feelings about the Bible and Christianity are like totally separate from my personal feelings about like the existence of a God or anything like that. But I do feel like the Bible, in my opinion, when I read it, like is always trying to it's selling something.
Hmm.
And it really particular and for I don't know. So I can't help but think of it that way. I don't even know if that made sense. We're live too, so hope y'all enjoyed
No,
that.
no, it's all right. So you were saying that the horses, like you were struck by the symbolic nature of the
Symbolism,
horses and
yes.
how it
Yeah.
follows like humanity through the course of history.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Thank you for saying
Yeah, no,
symbolism.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the four horsemen, the four horsemen, they symbolize, well, it comes right. It says that what is it? War, death, famine, and pestilence. I think are the four
Yeah.
horses that we have there, and so goddamn cool. But I love the four horsemen, and as a kid, it always was kind of mysterious because, and I didn't
It's like
know this.
cinematic a bit.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yes, it is.
okay.
Cinematic perfect. Yeah, and that's why they survive in history and in media. And I love it whenever I'm researching this stuff and I find out something of the Bible I didn't know. I love when this happens. I found out something today when I was
Ooh,
prepping this. This is not the only time the four horsemen are mentioned. The four horsemen are also mentioned in the book of Zechariah. I know you guys love the book of Zechariah. We love Zechariah,
Zechariah.
don't we? Yeah, nobody book nobody reads or knows anything about. I I'm sure nobody's actually read the book of Zechariah. No one can tell me anything. I challenge anyone out there, tell me anything you know about the book of Zechariah. You're not going to be able to. And
Zechariah.
it,
I like the way you say it.
Is that how you say it? Oh, it's fun. Yeah.
I would say Zachariah. I'm a white
Oh,
girl. I don't
that
know.
rolls off the tongue. But in the book of Zechariah, Zechariah sees, it is a fun word to say. Yeah, he sees four horsemen, four different colors. And except in that passage, they're sent out by an angel, and the four horsemen patrol the earth. And they come back and they tell God, all's good. It's peaceful on earth. Everything's okay. And then
Oh
the verse
shit.
ends. You're like, okay, I guess they had a different assignment. And they're like, okay, it's too peaceful here. Come fuck shit up, you guys. Go ahead and go for it. And I thought about when COVID hit. I thought about the four horsemen because one of the horses is pestilence, and I said, "Oh, look at that! This is everyone talks about the end times and everything. Now we've got pestilence. We got a pandemic here. That's the new horseman just dropped. Here we go. We got to start getting going with the rest of because the rest of them are kind of easy, right? Like when has there never been war, death, and famine, right? And you can pick
True,
any
yeah.
time in human history. There's going to be no shortage of war, death, and famine. Pestilence, though, that's kind of hit or miss. You're not gonna, I mean, you can think of things like, I don't know, the Black Death, bubonic plague, stuff like that. But a global pandemic, all right, sounds pretty good, ready to go. And I wanted to point out, well, this is just a side story here. This is just fun to me. Have you
Okay.
ever heard of the show Supernatural?
Yes, of course I've heard of it.
Okay, well, what?
I've seen it. I haven't watched like the last few seasons. I think I fell off at like season 3. I know it's like a whole culty thing and you gotta watch all of it, but I haven't seen all of it. But I've seen
Kayla, there are 17 seasons of Supernatural. There are
Oh, okay.
17 seasons. It's insanity. I first started watching it years ago. My girlfriend at the time, I thought it was a different show. There's another show called Charmed. I thought they were the same show.
I love Charmed.
All right,
Oh no, that I've seen all of it.
All right, I didn't know they were different shows, and so
But a lot of Bible references in both. I know
yeah,
where you're going with this. Yes,
and
because
so,
the Bible is scary.
yeah, it is. Well, she mentioned the show, and at the time, I think it had like 13 seasons of the show. And I said, okay, listen, there is no chance that a show has 13 good seasons. There's no way. I watched it. I was right. But it does have like at least 10 or 12. And that was, pretty good run. But I saw 17. But anyway, in one of the later seasons, maybe season 10 or 11, the four horsemen show up. And each of the horsemen have their own episode. And there was an episode called Good God, Y'all. I remember that was the name of the title or the title of the show. And I was like, that's interesting title for the episode. With Good God, Y'all, then it turned out that episode was about the Horseman War. And if anyone knows what I'm referencing, you guys know the song War, What Is It Good For? Absolutely Nothing from the 1970s. In the middle of the song, he says, good God, y'all. It was genius.
Wow,
To
cool.
name the episode Good God, Y'all, and the episode was about the war, the horseman. Brilliant. I love when people, because like,
that's cool shit.
that's not a reference everyone would get. Like you would have to know the song and that part of the song and how it ties into the horseman. But anyway, that was one thing I thought of. And the next one I wanted to bring up was, which horseman was it? Let me see. I mean, it has to be Death, right? Let me pull up the verses here. Get this bad boy up. Where is it? Then before me is a white horse. Second seal, horse came out. Rider. I heard what sound like the. Oh, there it is. Verse 8, it looks like. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following closely behind it. So in
Why isn't Hades riding the death horse? That's what my brain first wondered.
All right, so I'm glad you asked this. So, okay, first Hades that we know, like in our minds, Hades is hell, right? That's, we kind of use it interchangeably. In these days, Hades is like the Greek. Hades, like, it's not hell. It's just where dead people go. That's where everyone dead goes.
Like
it's just the underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you.
Like kind of how it's referred to in Greek mythology, right? Like
Hades. Yeah. So Hades in Greek mythology is where dead people go. In Judaism, it would have been Sheol. That's where dead people go. So like that's what they understood as Hades. Like it wasn't the lake of fire, so where dead people go. Now the rider. This is the only horse whose rider is named, and in English it's translated as Death. In Greek, his name is Thanatos, is like the actual name of the writer. And Thanatos is the Greek god of, it's the god of death, but it's the god of death, like not from war. I think if I remember correctly, where Thanatos comes from, and so I just find that fascinating. And so that's why Hades followed, because death, Thanatos would do his thing, people would die, and then Hades is
And
right
then
after it.
Hades was coming to scoop up them souls.
Let's go. Yep.
Hey, I'm tracking. I got it.
Let's happen here.
All
So
right.
yeah. And many of you may have recognized the name Thanatos. It sounds very similar to Thanos. That is not a mistake.
Thanos.
Yeah, it's not. That is not a coincidence. That Thanos, and in Marvel Comics, Thanos. This isn't really researched in the films at all, but in Marvel Comics, Thanos doesn't have the desire to wipe out a bunch of people, like half the universe, because he's trying to create this balance. In the comics, Thanos is like in love with the deity of death. Thanos is actually like romantically, yeah,
Oh,
romantically
I
involved
knew
with death,
that.
and he wants to
Yeah.
supply death with more souls and everything, which is why they called him Thanos in relation to Thanatos. So yeah, just some good trivia for you guys there.
Cool. Cool.
Any more thoughts on the Four Horsemen, Kayla? I mean, I feel like I just love seeing any media with Four Horsemen. I used to watch this TV show called Highlander when I was a kid, and they had these these immortals, these thousands-year-old beings, and they told stories about how the four of them would ride around, causing damage thousands of years ago. Those the origin of the Four Horsemen story. Any Four Horsemen shit I am in. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I only have one other thing to say. I have one note here under my four horsemen, or my horseman stuff, that you kind of already touched on with Christianity, but I wrote divine justice. Because you're right, like Christianity, or at least IFB, Independent Fundamental Baptist, how we were raised, like, yeah, really can't handle anyone that doesn't agree with them. Like, you're condemned, and like you are a project, or like you need to be preached at, or you need to be gotten away from. So I saw it there too. So I wrote down divine justice, and I love it when we're on the same wavelength.
Kayla, you have no idea how on the same wavelength we are. In fact, you're on the same wavelength as John of Patmos, because we're about to get to the fifth seal. And it plays exactly into what you just said, like to a
Okay.
scary level. Okay, so those are the first four seals. We have 3 seals to go, ladies and gentlemen. There's 3 more seals here. Let's see what we got. All right, the fifth seal. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, saying, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been. So here we go. The fifth seal is open.
Even from where we were at, that escalated so quickly. Even from where we were at, that escalated quickly. And wowzers. Anyway.
No, yeah, listen. You're right. I remember as I was like, oh, whoa, that took a quick turn, right? It went from these like quasi demonic beings that, oh, the Four Horsemen, these they aren't human, they're these agents of wrath and destruction. We're used to that, right?
Hang on 1 second. I'm having some audio issues.
Oh no. Folks out there,
My
can you hear me?
AirPods died.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. I gotta back out real quick. I'll be right back. We're sorry, folks, for this slight delay.
Oh no. Well, it's my make sure my mic is working. Yep, mine's on. I'm pretty sure you guys can still hear me. No one's commenting. I see you watching, but no one's commenting on this. But yeah, I want to get into that fifth seal right there. We're going to get to the fifth, sixth, and seventh seals and then moving on, but should be some pretty fun stuff right there. See that sky today, folks? How about blue? Huh? I'm really upset about what's going on with the Israel-Iran situation, since we're on the topic of the end of days here and everything. I find it incredibly annoying that the the national intelligence agencies all around the world had the same conclusion that the Iranians have not been working on creating a nuclear weapon. That's what they all say, right? Except for one. We have one country who says the opposite. And their leader, or prominent figure, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been saying that no, actually, the Iranians are a couple weeks away from creating a nuclear weapon. Only one who says it. And then our own national intelligence director says in March, 90 days ago, that not only the Iranians not building a nuclear weapon, they abandoned the nuclear weapons program back in 2023 or back in 2003. Then, coincidentally, a couple of days after the Israeli government unilaterally attacks Iran, preemptively is the word they use, unprovoked is the word I would use. Now all of a sudden she says they're 2 weeks away. I don't know. Kayla, can you hear me? You can? All right, let me add you back on the stage here. All right, we're good.
Okay, hi. Sorry, my AirPods died.
All good, folks. We're all fine.
I'm
Okay.
still live. No, I am on a live recording. Can you please get out of here? Lila, get out of here right now.
We'll get back to Kayla. Oh, you're back. Hold on. Let me see.
We can't have nice things. This is why I can't close it.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
All right, here we go.
We're discussing the end of
It's
time.
all good. It's all good. All right. So fifth seal we were talking about. Yeah, the fifth seal. Actually, let me go back into it a bit better for clips. Okay, I'll read it again. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been. And I thought that was great that you mentioned how a lot of the teaching that we were taught focused on, vengeance and retribution and blood. And then boom, we went right into jumping from these quasi-demonic creatures, the four horsemen that are just, destroying humans because that's what they do, to not just humans, but the saints, like those, the righteous dead saying, "God, we demand blood. When are we going to get it? We've waited for so long. When are you going to kill the unbelievers?" And God says, "Hey, here's a new set of clothes, some new threads for you. Just wait a little bit longer. We'll get
just chilling. You're going to get to murder. Don't worry, my precious."
Yeah, that was some
so ominous. And it does it just conflicts with everything else that we were being taught. And, the help thy neighbor, loving vibes of Christianity. It's not, what I'm getting at is I don't necessarily fault extremist, or fundamentalist for falling into these traps, because it is laid out here like that to be really contradicting and really terrifying and really hard to wrap your head around. So I don't ever fault anybody for it, because what the fuck?
I don't either. In fact, I think that the more radical and the more insane and literal Christians are, the more sense they make to me. Honestly, it makes a lot more sense. You have to kind of go out of your way to dismiss stuff like this. But I do get where John of Patmos and Christians in, I don't know, the late first century, I'm guessing. Yeah, the early second century would be coming from, because this is, 180, 200 years before Christianity was the state religion of Rome. At the time, Christians were being persecuted. Nero was covering them in tar and setting them on fire in arenas and stuff. I can see why they would be mad. I can see why these folks would want to cry out for blood and revenge. I would too, if I were there. So I got that. It's kind of weird to read thousands of years later, oh, wait, what are you guys' problem here? But yeah, it checks out to me. But I agree with you. I do understand that. Yeah. All right, and we are on the sixth seal now. I watched as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth. made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to the earth, as figs drop from fig trees when shaken by a strong wind. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and everyone else, both slave and free, hid in caves among the rocks and the mountains. They called out to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can withstand it?" So now we have, people begging for death. So they're begging to die because of the wrath of God. And the stars falling from the sky, something that happens a lot in the book of Revelation. It has a whole lot of stars falling from the sky, which seemed odd when I read as a kid. It's like, oh yeah, these guys just didn't know what they were doing. But I was wondering how they would.
They didn't understand like celestial events, and that was
Yeah,
probably a huge fear. Yeah. So.
yeah. It was one of those things where I think it was one of the thoughts where I had that, okay, a lot of this has to be metaphor now, because if I'm presuming that the Bible is from God, God knows how big stars are, right? Like God knows that stars can't actually fall on the earth. So I'm assuming this must be metaphorical. And then you have to wonder, well, what else is metaphorical, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that was my
point. Yeah. And what right here, that the heavens being received like so, and there's like, this is a side note here, but I remember there's a scene in Ghostbusters when we were watching as a kid where they recite that the sun became darkness and the moon became blood. And the Ghostbusters mentioned how that's in the book of Revelation. Like, oh, yeah, so sure is. That's I thought when I saw it here. All right. And last one, the seventh seal. When he opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven for about half an hour. Weird. I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it's just a silence in heaven for half.
It was just a quick little war.
Yeah. And like, folks, a lot has been happening. Let's take a break here. Let's just kind of
half an hour.
Yeah, let's just process this. You got 30 minutes, and we're getting right back to Armageddon. Okay. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel who had a golden censer stood at the altar. He was given much incense to offer with the prayers of God's people and the golden altar. The smoke of the incense, together with the prayers of God's people, went up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it to the earth. And there came pearls of thunder, rumblings and flashes, and an earthquake. Oh, shit. I think that was it. Yeah. And so that was it. That's actually the beginning of like when Jesus shows up on earth and the real party begins. But we have a little bit of silence, a little bit of waiting here, and then the angel unleashes, thunder, lightning, hail, earthquakes, a big fireworks show before the Son of Man returns and exacts his vengeance on the unbelievers. So hell of a start to the book of Revelation there.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah. I don't know. My favorite part, I think, is right after this. And that's when we get the giant locusts with scorpion tails and faces of humans and crowns on their head. Just terrifying shit. And there's the...
always reminded me so much of like the New Testament. I always say them backwards. The Old Testament, right? The one at the beginning, the Old Testament. The Old Testament, because everything kind of between the Old Testament and Revelations is just so different. It's just so different. And we know a lot about like books that could have been in the Bible that weren't. So we don't have to go down that whole rabbit trail today, but we should do an episode on language and all of that and include that. But I don't know. It's just, yeah, like I remember thinking like as a teenager, and you're a little bit older than me, but like all this stuff that we're dealing with politically now has been building up our whole lives, at minimum, and I remember as a teenager being like, it's coming right now. And and I'm not being like the right answer, but also being like, I hope it never happens. Like that wasn't the right answer either, as far as like how we were supposed to feel about it. It was strange. So, yeah.
People would mention this all the time because like like Kayla mentioned, there's been trouble in the Middle East for as long as we've been alive. Like, you can't point to any part of the last 40 years when there wasn't some sort of war, some sort of conflict, or some sort of global event or event of global importance happening in the Middle East. So since that was always happening, you could always have folks saying, all right, this is it. This is the end. This is the sign of the end times right here. Any minute now, God's coming to bring Armageddon and to rapture his people. And this actually annoyed me when I was still a Christian. I remember this bothering me. There is a Bible passage where I think it's Jesus says that you'll know the end times are coming when there are false prophets, wars, and rumors of wars. And people would reference this, and it's like, that's kind of vague, right? I think that, yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, it's like wars happens every day in human history. Rumors of wars, even I was like, that's not like just people talking about it. Like anybody could say a rumor of a war,
It's
and that's
like propaganda, right?
yeah, and that's a prophecy to you. It's as weak as it gets. So that always annoyed me. And also, I remember hearing from older people who were, the 60s and 70s back in the 90s, and they would mention how they all thought Hitler was the Antichrist. They all thought that the World War II was the end. I was like, they have a better claim than we do. Like, if I was living back then, I would think it was the end of the world too, right? Especially when the nuclear bombs dropped. I mean, if it didn't happen then, why would I think that, I don't know, Gulf War I would be the end of the world? I don't think so. It doesn't really measure up to World War II, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really interesting point I never considered.
Yeah,
it always was like not world wars that we were like, oh, or that we would get that kind of validation from inside the congregation for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. If I lived through World War II, I would not think that a random war happening in the Middle East would be the end of the world, right? I was like, okay, I've seen a lot worse. I was a lot more scared of that than I mean, I don't know. I thought about this.
World vibes from Revelation. I don't know if that's just you and I, but yeah.
Also, real quick. Do you remember them talk about, this was always funny to me, that they would mention that something bad must have happened to the United States. Like something bad must happen to the United States to reduce its power globally before the rapture, because the United States is not mentioned in the book of Revelation. And they always talk about how weird that was. Do you remember them?
I remember asking about that at least at the Haven. And I was kind of told, basically the answer was because America's so important. Like, oh, we're in there. Like, we're just.
Oh, I never heard people say that, really.
So we are in all these secret hidden metaphors, but like.
Oh, wow. That's actually a better answer. I never heard anyone say it'd be hard, but then again, how can they prove you wrong? It's the Bible. You can make it all metaphorical. But there's a bunch of countries mentioned in the Bible, a bunch of countries. Ethiopia, India, Spain, Turkey. You can find dozens of countries mentioned.
And
Book of Revelation.
One country under God is not there one time.
Right, yeah. And, yeah. But I didn't notice it. It was until someone brought it up. It was pretty early. And then, but I noticed it ever since. But people in church would say,
so he knew about America. So again, I think their argument stops there. Sorry, I couldn't help but add that.
What was that? I didn't catch that.
But according to the IFB Christians, God is omnipotent. He knows all things at all times, future, past, present. So if America, there's no debating America is a world power. And if all these other countries, and especially like world powers, are referenced in biblical text, why did our omnipotent God not whisper it into anybody's ear?
Yeah. Well, that's why I heard I heard several people say this, that something must happen to reduce the United States power so that it's kind of like a non-player globally. That, we lose a war, we lose money, we lose influence. And that's why all this stuff happening in the Revelation, they never mention anything like that.
We did lose power now. Like, are we not historically a global power?
I know.
We fell right now. Like, I think that we could have been referenced if we
right.
It's an omnipotent source of information.
Yeah, that's true, especially for the rest of the Bible, right? Like, let's say like when the rapture comes, the United States, is nothing, or maybe it doesn't exist anymore. Okay, fine. But Why didn't Jesus say? I always say this, like the Great Commission, when Jesus says, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit."
And you reference a whole continent that was.
By the way, yes. By the way, there are 3 continents you guys don't know anything about. There's North America, South America, and Australia. And you guys don't know anything about it. There's millions of people there. Don't wait 1,500 years before you get the word of God to them. Like, that seems
not
important.
even like mysteriously, not even like, because in the Bible, like we love to find little ways that God was like flexing.
Yeah.
Like he knew, he didn't know. There's nothing.
Nothing.
It's
Right.
almost like no one who wrote the Bible, which is a lot of people, had any idea.
Oh, yeah, that was always frustrating. Like that's a much more glaring omission than anything in Revelation, that Jesus didn't tell them, don't wait until the 16th century after my death before anyone hears the name Jesus. Like, that's a lot of people who go to hell.
On y'all. That's all I have.
Yeah.
He loved to flex on you. So I'm missing that opportunity, but okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But all right, that's the end of our first foray in the book of Revelation. Go ahead.
More.
Oh, you do? Oh, I thought you only chapter 6. Oh, let's hear it.
Mine shorter, mine are quicker.
Oh, let's go. All right. Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear that. Okay.
I know you're shocked because all of season 1, I never once showed up to an episode prepared. So this is new season.
I love it.
So buckle in. Okay. So we did my first one. My second one that I wrote down was the mark of the beast and economic control. I referenced Revelation 13, 16 through 17. Part of that verse is, and he causeth all, and we talked about this a bit, so it's full circle. He causeth all to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads, talking about the 666. And I wrote down like economic control, and I'm glad that you brought up what you did about it not being like, and that was preached at us. Like, we were preached at, like, there's not going to be a 666 on your head. It's going to be a chip in your hand, or it's going to be, it was
barcodes.
Yeah, like we were super afraid of like technology and the progression of science and medical advances. But yeah, I wrote the idea of the mark preventing people from buying and selling has definitely inspired other interpretations about like surveillance technology and and then I put a little something on AI and digital currency.
Oh.
I'm obsessed with AI currently, but yeah, that was that. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, that was something they talked about a lot. They would try to use modern technology as a way to describe things in the Bible. The mark of the beast was a big one. That was a big one. I remember them saying that you're not actually gonna have the number 666 on your body. They're gonna put a microchip in you, or they're gonna put a barcode somewhere on your body, and you won't be able to purchase food without getting this mark, which meant that you worshipped the beast somehow. I was like, I don't see how those are related. If you got the mark to get food, that doesn't mean that you think this being is God.
Because like, if any society was going to be controlled now, like we would get barcodes, like we would get like probably a chip in. So it's not like an irrational fear. So when I think about it like that, I'm like, here we are with propaganda again in the Bible. That's so yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's funny living for a while and seeing how people will be adamant to get something and how something is evil and wrong, and then fast forward 15 years later,
debit cards with chips in them, and
yes, exactly. If you told someone in 1994 that every credit card they had would be chipped and that they would carry a machine in their pocket that can be tracked at any time by anyone, no matter where you went, that you would put your credit card and banking info online, they would shit their pants. I said, no way. I'm not going to stand for that invasion of privacy. Yes, you are. Yes, the fuck you are. You're going to participate in modern society just like everybody else. This, it's kind of like these people don't exist anymore. But
I do feel like we heard that preaching. Like I do.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, like I heard, you as a Christian have a responsibility to make sure you don't fall into these traps. And you're so right. Like, it's not, I don't know any Christians that don't have a phone. Like, they did just go right into it, right in line.
Of course. Yeah. And that's a kind of a, outside of an ancillary one, but sometimes they made it like moral stances, which annoys me, where women can't wear pants. That's against God's word. They all wear pants now. They don't give a fuck.
We're a little bit behind history, but they still fall in line.
Yeah. And they would say this too. they would always use that example of how the world is here and the
We're
church is
not
here.
like, yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
then when the world moves, the church follows. And they said, we can't be like that. They're all like that. Every last fucking one of them. They do the
Doesn't
same
make
thing.
you righteous to like dig your heels in and not like progress as quickly as anybody.
No,
Like
it's insane. Yeah, it's obnoxious. They would also talk about how this is later in Revelation. I don't know if you're going to bring it up, but there's the two witnesses that are sent to heaven or sent to earth from God.
Mhm.
And the two witnesses are murdered. And it says that all the world saw these people murdered. And of course, like, how does that work? And they said, television. This is that. I was like, oh, that's pretty clever. I kind of like that. That's kind of pretty clever. I kind of like it. But they would try to use technology and say that this is how this is going to be implemented, other than like, oh, this is all weird, crazy, metaphorical nonsense by a guy who was probably high on acid or something when he wrote this shit.
Yeah. All right. I just have two more. I'm ready to wrap up too, so we'll be quick. My third one that I wrote down was Revelation 16:16, which, if you don't know, is like kind of the Battle of Armageddon. The quote is, "And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." And I wrote that. I wrote my notes under it again are cosmic justice, a showdown between the forces of good and evil, which is something that Christianity has had an interesting relationship in other texts, and I know we've talked about the struggle between good and evil, or a final battle between good and evil. It's again something that at least like the IFB denominations hates in any other context. Like there should be no other showdown of good and evil. This is like the only one. So anyway, and nations gathered for judgment, and I wrote climax of tribulation. But again, I think this we don't have to go super heavy into this one, but I think it supports all the other conversations that we had, because I put divine forces between good and evil, and prophetic weight of all the things like coming to head. So anyway, my fourth one that I put was Revelations 19:11 through 16. The second coming of Christ, like, which is, I thought, where you were going with all this. I thought we were going to dive heavy into that. So maybe we could make that, like, do a second episode just on that. But, and I saw heaven open, and behold, white horses, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in my mind, I keep going back to, again, some of these other conversations about how, like, the description of the Lamb and all these scary things. But then in Revelations 19, then there's Jesus, and it's chill. It's cool. We're all, I can't imagine having like seen, heaven or the earth spit out all these other things and then be like, even if he did come down and he was like totally chill, I would still be like, that's terrifying. Like, why would we trust that? So, some of my points were, it's the most glorious portrayal of Jesus, all of those. And, I wrote combining awe and power and fulfillment, which, Christ isn't the lamb. He's a warrior king. Like, and I feel like that ties into my propaganda point. Like, I just, when you think about these texts, the book of Revelations as a whole, and like if you compare it to, historical texts or things that are designed to influence the way that we think, like it's spot on. It has all those features. It has all those characters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was my like main point. And then I did want to talk about, in Revelations, it talks about, it never says Antichrist. I don't think he's there's an Antichrist is said in the Bible. Is it? Like, they call him other stuff, but
I think so. I think it mentions, I thought so. Well, I don't know. I'll find the verse. I thought so, but
I just wanted to kind of touch on some of the verses that deal with the idea of an Antichrist, because one of my big things growing up was that, like, how will we not know? Again, I said this already. Like, if we are studying God's word, and there should be Christians that can identify the Antichrist. Like, that was my conclusion. So I'm just going to read you some of those verses. One is Revelations 13:1. And I stood upon the sand and the sea and saw the beast rise up out of the sea. Revelations 13, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. This beast has two horns. He's a deceiver, like some of the stuff mentioned in I think we read 13. Yeah, some of these things I already mentioned. So when I look at the political climate that we live in, and I'm not trying to go super political, but we're going to. I think that it would be rational for any Christian to look at perhaps our president and be like, at least he fits some of these qualifications. If you're thinking about it literally, if you're thinking about it metaphorically. So I just wanted to see if you had any feedback on that. And I do have more verses I can read, but I'm getting a little nervous about this
No,
subject.
why? No, well, listen.
I feel like people take it so personal, but
Well, yeah.
go ahead.
No, it's like I don't think that there's a better. If I believe the Antichrist is real, I don't know why I wouldn't assume it was Donald Trump. Like I don't think Donald Trump. I think it's funny there's a possibility Donald Trump is our first atheist president. I find that kind of humorous. That I don't believe for a second that Donald Trump believes in God. Certainly, he isn't a Christian.
He wasn't a Christian before he really got serious about his presidential campaign.
No, he never went to church. Yeah, he never went to church. They asked him what his favorite testament was. A layup, if there ever was one for Christianity. He says, "Oh, I like both equally." They asked him to name his favorite Bible verse. He said, "That's a very personal issue for me." And he says, "Well, can you tell us a verse?" No, he can't tell you a single Bible verse. I remember them asking about communion, and he says, "Oh yeah, they have the little wine, the little crackers, or something like that." He knows nothing about this religion at all. He thinks everyone who worships like anyone other than him is a fucking rube and an idiot. That picture he had when they were breaking up the protest where he holding the picture of the Bible and the Bible's upside. He didn't even hold the Bible correctly. I just find it really fun.
He just make like $1 million off of royalties off of his Trump Bible too.
The Trump Bible, hilarious. Hilarious.
So we got to fact check that. But
no, I don't know how much easily millions, had to have been millions. Like the Trump Bible, which it's a regular Bible with I think the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution added to it. And with this cheap leather, fake leather, whatever. And Trump, they would bring those Bibles and have Trump sign them. I mean, there's like nothing like Trump has, he didn't have a firm stance on abortion until like he ran for president. And Donald Trump has paid for several abortions, and looking at his kids, I guarantee he wishes he paid for a few more. He's like an awful person, and by normal human standards, let alone the standards set by Jesus of Nazareth. It's just the fact that this guy is beloved by the evangelical Christians. I'm not surprising knowing what we know about them, but easy example.
Sessions with a lot of, and I'm not talking about every Christian. I'm not saying here that every Christian is pro-Trump.
No,
that's not what we're saying. But I have had some interesting conversations with some extremists or fundamentalists. So I mean, people that are interpreting the Bible literally in their lives, but that seem to like really like just ignore that background, which I think like any other person or president, we have always held to a really high standard, not just they're running for presidency, but their whole lives. That's kind of been a standard thing in America. And I've had these conversations with extremists lately where I will get to the end of like a healthy, respectful debate with them. And at the end of it, the answer is just, he's God's guy. Like God ordained him, like he's God's guy. And so I just wanted to, I know you love fun facts and I brought one today.
Oh, let's go.
I brought a fun fact with me. So I just want to encourage people to like do a full chain analysis on those thoughts and emotions and follow it all the way back, whether it's like through the pursuit of like fact and history or whatever. But for example, the Pledge of Allegiance in the United States, we say one nation under God, right? Do you know if that was originally in our Pledge of Allegiance?
I do know this, but go for it.
You already know it. I was hoping I was going to have one that you hadn't. But that's something that I have heard like extremists and extreme conservatives like beat to death. This is just an example, but under God was added to our Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. Do you know who added it?
Salmon Chase?
Nope, Dwight D.
Dwight?
Eisenhower. Yep.
Oh, well, I mean, who the president was. I knew the president was 1954, but I was like, who wrote it is what I was thinking. But yeah.
And it was amid Cold War tensions, and he wanted to distinguish the United States from our atheist and communist rivals, such as the Soviet Union. So again, kind of to my points earlier, like this is like people's real faith. Like I've said that before on our podcast. Like, I think faith is beautiful. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with Christianity or believing in God or wanting to trust your consciousness and your soul and all that stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But where we do get wrong is where we start like preaching these stuff and like dying on these hills as though American politics and Christianity aren't like heavily intertwined from like the get-go, as far as like a symbiotic relationship, honestly, is what I'm trying to get at. So it under God was added for political purposes. It was a political move to set us apart and to make us feel superior. And so I don't know. I had a better way to like end that whole little spiel, but
no, it's great. That's
analysis on all of those things. Like, make sure you know who wrote all the books in that Bible that you are betting your soul on, and like go further than that. Make sure you know who interpreted that language and like who made money off of it, and before you decide how you feel, because it's messy.
Yeah. That the pledge. Oh God, was it? Now that I think about it, I was laughing about the Eisenhower thing. It's like I knew it was at 1950 because like I knew under God was added in 1954, and in God we trust was added to money I think in 56. Like those came right around the same time for the same reasons, like you mentioned, that we wanted to distinguish ourselves from the godless communists, and that God's very, because we all think it dates back to the founding. But the original motto of the United States was not in God we trust. It was E pluribus unum, from many one. And but my answer I laughed with the Salmon Chase thing because actually Salmon Chase died like in the 1880s, so I was way off on that. But I thought maybe he wrote the pledge or something like that. But anyway, yeah, those are interesting facts right there, because our concept of reality and religion, how it deals with politics in real life, it's just based on our experience and not history a lot of times. But that was good stuff, and so can't wait to do a future episode on this, folks. We're going to go more into the Book of Revelation, talk about some other crazy stuff going on. But till then, we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.